Hi, I'm Taylor Gerken with Peghead Nation, and I'm here with the latest version of Taylor's 512 CE, a brand new version of a classic model just introduced now in September of 2022, and it's interesting on very many levels, so let's dive in. If you've been around Taylor guitars for a while, you know that 500 series guitars have traditionally been mahogany instruments, mahogany back and sides, in some cases even mahogany tops. There have been some limited editions that deviated from that, but for the most part we think of a 500 as a mahogany guitar, and they have been around since, shall we say, forever, since the very early days of Taylor guitars, and grand concert size instruments, which this is, have been part of the 500 series, I believe, since pretty much the beginning of the Grand Concert line, which came out in the mid-80s. So a 512 is a guitar that most Taylor aficionados will have some idea of what that should be, and this instrument sort of breaks with that tradition in a very interesting way. So let's cut to the chase. The thing that's the biggest difference about this, and it's significant, is that this guitar now uses red urban ironbark wood for the back and sides of the guitar, and that is a very interesting departure from mahogany, not only because it's a different wood, but it expands Taylor's efforts to use urban woods that are harvested from urban forests or anywhere there's urban woods, particularly to Southern California, which is where Taylor's of course located. And they began sort of dipping their feet into that a couple of years ago with the Builder's Edition 324 CE, as well as with the standard model GT guitar that came out a couple of years ago, which use urban ash, which is another wood that is sourced from urban trees. And this urban ironbark is the latest effort in that, and that is of course part of Taylor's dedication to providing sustainably harvested material, and sort of take some of the pressure off to be using tropical hardwoods or endangered hardwoods for the construction of the guitar. So it's a very forward-thinking thing to do. I really applaud the efforts to work with several companies that specialize in urban forestry and the sourcing of those woods. And they've done a lot of experiments with different kinds of woods that are available through these programs. The urban ash was the first one that they started using. This ironbark is an interesting wood. It's a super dense wood. Andy Powers describes it as being almost as dense as ebony, kind of between rosewood and ebony. It's one of the few types of wood that actually doesn't float. It'll sink in water. It's that heavy and dense. You can sort of tell the weight of the wood by the weight of this guitar, and as such, it sort of puts it a little bit more into the rosewood guitar tonality than what we would think of as a mahogany type sound for these 500 series guitars. Ironbark is part of the greater eucalyptus family of woods, and it's apparently sort of a perfect wood to work with. It takes well to being finished. It can be sanded. It works well with common woodworking tools, all of which are factors for successfully building a guitar, particularly in a production environment. So Taylor has come out with this 512 CE as well as with this 514 CE that's replacing the existing 514, which of course is another classic model. We're going to get to a demo of that guitar very soon. I thought I'd show you both right now, but I'm going to focus on this Grand Concert. So you heard me play the guitar. I'm in DADGAD tuning right now, and one of the things that really struck me about this instrument, and it makes sense given the density of the wood, is the great sustain that the guitar has. The notes just really ring out. So just a lovely sound that way. I believe it is right. Andy Powers was mentioning that it brings the tonality a little bit more into what we think of maybe as an 800 series guitar. because of the rosewood-like quality of this wood. So definitely a very interesting and new flavor to the 500 series, if you want to think of it that way. The guitar is, of course, braced with Taylor's V-Class bracing, and it has an ebony fingerboard and bridge, fairly standard for Taylor. It has a new fingerboard inlay done in Italian acrylic. It's a pattern that we haven't seen before. It extends into the peg head. Taylor standard chrome tuners. Slight shading in the top, and I should mention that this is a torrefied Sitka spruce top. Sitka spruce has been used on 500s for a long time. Most recently, most of the spruce top 500s used a Lutz spruce top. As I mentioned earlier, some actually used mahogany tops, and there have also been some models with cedar tops. So no radical departure there, even though this torrefied Sitka is slightly different from what's been used most recently on these 500s. Beautiful shading on this. There's also a little bit of shading going on the back of the guitar and the sides. You can see the rich color that this ironbark offers. Fairly standard 500 style appointments that include tortoiseshell binding. It's got wooden purfling. It's got an abalone rosette. The standard Taylor plastic sort of tortoiseshell pickguard, so overall it fits into the look that you might expect from a 500 series guitar, but in a slightly different and new way. And of course, changing this 500 series to these new wood options is sort of in line to what Taylor's recently done with their 700 series, which has changed from being an Indian rosewood guitar to being a koa guitar. And so it's kind of fun to see them changing up these two very traditional sort of legacy lines of guitars to these new materials. Now, all of Taylor's grand concert guitars make great fingerstyle instruments. They have a short 24 7/8 inch scale, nut width of 1 3/4 inches. So comfortable fingerstyle dimensions and super easy to play and just a nice response, which is why I played some fingerstyle on this guitar in the intro to this video. But a lot of people also use these guitars for backup playing, especially in the studio. These Taylor Grand Concerts have long been favorites for many studio players in all styles, really. So I'm going to show you a little bit what the guitar sounds like if I'm strumming it. I'm back to standard tuning now. I was in DADGAD earlier. And so just give a little bit of strumming demo on this guitar before I plug it into the amp and show you what that sounds like. So great balanced voice would work excellent for accompanying other instruments or vocals, and just again very easy and fun to play that way. Of course, the guitars includes Taylor's ES2 electronics, so I'll go out and show you what that sounds like plugged into our Fishman Loudbox Mini Charge amp. These guitars should be showing up at dealers now, and I definitely encourage you to check one out. Very cool to see this new take on the 500 series, and really excellent to see Taylor expanding its efforts for using sustainably grown woods, or in the case of this, tapping into a resource of woods that grows in Southern California, some of which would be ending up in the wood chipper somewhere, and picking out these choice logs that have been cut as part of urban forestation projects to create these great guitars out of them. So kudos to Andy Powers and Bob Taylor and their team down in El Cajon, California, for expanding these efforts. And yeah, I encourage you to check them out. So please come back here to Peghead Nation for more of our gear demos. Let's listen to the guitar plugged into the amp.